Carman family was known for quiet wealth and a spotless reputation, but behind their lakefront home, tension had been building for months, especially between the patriarch Richard Carman and his son Lucas, a young man convinced he deserved control of the family fortune. When police arrived one cold October morning, they found the house eerily undisturbed. No forced entry, no broken windows, only a chilling stillness and a faint trail of fuel leading from room to room. Inside were the bodies of Richard in his reading chair, Evelyn collapsed by the stairs, and Margaret Carman, lifeless in her bedroom. The only person missing was Lucas. At first, the motives seemed obvious: greed, entitlement, resentment. Neighbors confirmed hearing shouting the night before, including Lucas yelling, "If you won't give me what's mine, I'll take it." But 2 weeks into the investigation, detectives uncovered a twist that changed everything. The Carman Family Trust held a hidden clause stating that if the immediate family died, the estate would not go to Lucas, but instead to Evelyn's sister, Anna, a woman Lucas had always despised. Lucas had no idea the power he tried to seize had never been his. The tragedy he created didn't make him wealthy. It left him with nothing. When investigators finally caught up with him hundreds of miles away, Lucas wasn't angry. He was distraught, whispering, "I killed them for nothing." The jury took only 3 hours to convict him on all counts, sentencing him to life without parole. But the true shift in power came at sentencing, when Anna, now the unexpected heir to the Carman estate, faced him in court and said, "Your family gave you everything, and you threw it away chasing something that was never yours. Today, justice is what belongs to you." Her words landed harder than the judge's gavel. In that moment, it became clear that Lucas hadn't just lost his freedom, he had lost the very power he believed he was entitled to. The Carman family deaths became a haunting reminder that when ambition twists into obsession, love becomes collateral damage, and when greed becomes your guide, you will always end up lost. The final lesson left behind was simple and devastating. The greatest inheritance is character, and the greatest downfall is believing you are owed more than you have ever earned. After Lucas Carman was sentenced to life without parole, most people thought the case was over, but the unsettling truth was that the deeper investigators dug into the Carman estate, the more inconsistencies they uncovered. Anna, now in control of everything Lucas once believed was his, began receiving anonymous envelopes, each one containing photocopies of old financial documents Richard Carman had locked away for decades. The papers hinted at secret transfers, offshore accounts, and a quiet, unexplained withdrawal made the night before the murders. Detectives initially dismissed the envelopes as the work of a crank, but when the third envelope arrived containing a blurry photo of someone standing in the Carman house hours before the killings, the entire case began to shift again. The figure in the photo wasn't Lucas. The height was wrong. The build was wrong. And whoever the person was, they moved like they knew the house intimately. Anna, already shaken by inheriting the estate she never wanted, confronted the lead detective and demanded to know if they had truly found the whole truth, or if Lucas had been the easiest explanation for something much larger. Behind closed doors, investigators admitted something they never told the public. The fuel trail found in the home didn't match the gas Lucas had purchased that night, and a partial fingerprint lifted from the upstairs hallway never matched anyone in the family. As rumors spread, reporters circled, and people in town began whispering that the Carman case was far from solved. Lucas, locked away in a state prison, suddenly requested a meeting with detectives, claiming he remembered something important from the night of the murders, something he swore he hadn't told anyone. When officers arrived to hear him speak, he leaned forward, his voice low and unsteady, and said, "I wasn't alone in that house, and you know exactly who else was there." Before detectives could press him for a name, the prison lockdown alarm blared, guards rushed in, and Lucas was pulled away, leaving his final words hanging in the air like a threat. And the worst part was the expression on his face, not fear, but recognition, like he had just realized he wasn't the only Carman with a secret worth killing for. Detectives left the prison stunned by Lucas Carman's claim that he wasn't alone in the house the night of the murders, and the moment they returned to the station, they pulled the old case files back out, combing through every overlooked detail. That's when they found it: security footage from a gas station 2 miles from the Carman home, showing a dark SUV parked at the far edge of the lot minutes before the murders. The driver never got out, never bought anything, just sat there with the engine running, headlights off. When investigators enhanced the image, the outline of the vehicle matched one registered to a close Carman family associate, someone who had always been around but never examined closely. Richard Carman's longtime business partner and financial advisor, Harold Benton. Harold had attended every memorial, offered condolences to Anna, and had even testified against Lucas, insisting the son had become unstable and dangerously obsessed with money. But now, the documents mailed to Anna painted a different picture. Harold had full access to the Carman accounts, had convinced Richard to make late-night transfers, and was the last person to speak to him hours before the murders. When detectives brought Harold in for questioning, he was calm, too calm, answering every question with rehearsed precision. But his mask slipped the moment they showed him the blurry photo from inside the Carman home. His jaw tightened, his eyes flickered, and for the first time, he broke his smooth composure, but only for a second. He leaned back and said, "You're asking the wrong questions. Lucas wasn't lying, but he wasn't telling you the whole truth either." When investigators pressed him, Harold smiled, not with fear, but with confidence, and told them they should ask Anna about the night she received the first envelope. That statement sent detectives straight to Anna, who looked genuinely terrified when they repeated Harold's claim. She insisted she had no connection to Harold beyond family finances, no reason to be in the Carman house that night, and no knowledge of any offshore accounts or transfers. But when they asked to see the envelopes again, she hesitated. Not long, just a second, but enough. Enough for detectives to notice, enough for them to realize she wasn't telling them everything. Before they could question her further, a patrol officer rushed into the room with breaking news. Harold Benton had been found unconscious in his holding cell. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, just a single sheet of paper folded in his hand, another photocopy from the secret documents. On the back, written in rushed ink, were 5 chilling words: "We're not done with you." The signature at the bottom wasn't Lucas's, and when detectives showed it to Anna, her face went pale, because she recognized the handwriting immediately. When Anna admitted she recognized the handwriting on the note found in Harold Benton's cell, the entire investigation shifted again, because the writing didn't belong to Lucas, Harold, or anyone in the Carman household. It belonged to Margaret Carman, the elderly grandmother who had supposedly died the same night as Richard and Evelyn. Detectives were stunned, but Anna insisted she knew her handwriting anywhere. Margaret wrote her letters every month, each one in the same looping script. That revelation forced investigators back to the autopsy reports, where they found their next shock. Margaret Carman's body had been signed off by a contracted medical examiner brought in from another county due to a staff shortage, and that examiner had since vanished. No forwarding address, no employment records, nothing. When investigators traced the chain of custody for Margaret's remains, they discovered the records had been altered. The time of death changed, the transport log adjusted, and the signature on the release form forged. Suddenly, the possibility nobody wanted to say aloud became impossible to ignore. Margaret Carman might not have died in the house at all. Detectives returned to Lucas, demanding to know who else was in the house that night, but Lucas only smiled bitterly and said, "You're finally catching up." He refused to say more, insisting that some truths are paid for in blood, and that if Margaret was alive, she wasn't running, she was hunting. Meanwhile, evidence mounted that someone had been manipulating the entire case. The envelopes sent to Anna, the offshore transfers Richard never authorized, the falsified autopsy, all pointing to someone who knew the Carman family from the inside, someone who understood their financial empire, their rivalries, their weaknesses. As detectives pulled surveillance footage from Margaret's old nursing aide, they found a clip that froze them completely. A woman matching Margaret's height and posture, walking with a cane, stepping into a black sedan the morning after the murders, her face hidden beneath a scarf, and the car was registered not to Margaret, but to a shell company tied to the secret accounts. Anna, trembling, admitted Margaret had been growing paranoid in the months before her death, convinced someone in the family was plotting against her and claiming she had proof they would never see coming. Detectives tried to track the black sedan, but every camera it passed had been disabled at the exact moment it drove by. Someone was covering her trail, someone with resources, someone who knew investigators were getting close. And then, just as detectives prepared to issue a statewide alert, an unmarked envelope arrived at the station. No return address, no fingerprints, nothing inside except a single photograph of Margaret Carman standing in a dim hallway, alive, staring directly into the camera, holding a handwritten note that said, "You're looking in the wrong place." Detectives stared at the photograph of Margaret Carman, alive and unafraid, as if she were daring them to follow her. And the more they studied her expression, the more they realized she wasn't running from danger. She was orchestrating it. The handwriting on the note, the calculated timing of each envelope, the altered autopsy records, it all pointed to one chilling truth. Margaret had staged her own death. But the question wasn't how she did it. It was why. When investigators dug deeper into the Carman finances, they uncovered a pattern of money transfers dating back nearly 15 years, all funneling into accounts controlled by Margaret under aliases even her family didn't know she used. Richard and Evelyn had unknowingly been funding something massive, something hidden, something that required the erasure of anyone who might expose it. Detectives confronted Lucas again, telling him Margaret was alive, but he didn't react with shock. He reacted with fear. His voice cracked as he whispered that Margaret had once warned him, "Blood may bind us, but blood can also betray," and that she believed the entire family had become a liability to her work. When investigators pressed him to explain what that work was, Lucas refused to speak, clutching his arms like someone expecting punishment. Meanwhile, new evidence surfaced from a neighbor's old security system. A grainy clip showing an ambulance leaving the Carman home the night of the murders, but with no record of any ambulance dispatch. Investigators traced the vehicle to a private medical transport company that had shut down 2 days after the killings, its staff disappearing without a trace. Every lead pointed to one conclusion. Margaret had help, professional help. Someone had been protecting her, moving her, hiding her. And the deeper detectives dug, the more a pattern emerged. Every witness who might have identified Margaret, every employee who handled the Carman estate, every aide who worked with her in the months before the murders. They were either missing, relocated, or dead under natural causes. When detectives finally obtained a warrant for Margaret's last known storage unit, they expected old family heirlooms. What they found instead sent a cold ripple through the room. Dozens of surveillance photos of the Carman family taken over years. Richard entering banks, Evelyn shopping alone, Lucas arguing with his father, Anna visiting the house. Each photo dated, labeled, categorized. Margaret hadn't been documenting memories. She had been documenting threats. And at the very back of the unit sat a single file box marked contingency. Inside was a list of names, all crossed out, except one. Anna Carman's name sat at the bottom, untouched, underlined once. When detectives rushed to contact her, she didn't answer. Her car wasn't at her home. Her phone was turned off. And as officers pulled up her last known location on traffic cameras, they saw it. Anna stepping into the same black sedan Margaret had been seen entering weeks earlier, the door closing behind her as if she had been expected. The sedan pulled into traffic, turned a corner, then vanished from every camera in the city, just like before. And for the first time, detectives realized something far more dangerous than Margaret merely being alive. Anna hadn't been taken. She had gone willingly.